Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to House Party 5v5. The Premier League, as of last week, has concluded its official regular season of play. Only the top 6 teams remain. One team, Seoul 7, which disbanded earlier on in the season, is already gone. Their spot next season will be taken by the number 1 placing team in the minor league. 2 of the other teams will be fighting for their spots in relegations, and one is simply sitting in Premier League purgatory. No playoffs, no relegations, just the end of the season. For the other 6, though, we're entering into a month of playoffs. The opportunity to compete over the course of multiple weeks in best of 3s against their opponents to prove that they truly are the best here in House Party 5v5. We don't run double elimination. We don't run redemption. You prove yourself in the best of 3 or you go home. And to kick things off with a bang, we've got White Lightning versus Spooky Midnight to start these playoffs off right. I'm Captain Flowers here in the casting desk, joined by the Saved One for this first best of 3. And Saved, tell me how you think these teams are going to match up.
You've got the 4th place team, White Lightning, versus the 6th place team, which is Spooky Midnight. On paper, White Lightning should win, but White Lightning has been slacking in these past couple of weeks. The bot lane hasn't really showed up. Spellbinding, iffy. But the real only threat that White Lightning really has is Alcantos and Kianan. These 2 players are basically the all-stars of this team. Both of them have shown up every single week. And then you have over on the side of Spooky Midnight, Harper Lee is carrying this team on his back. He's an exceptional ADC, and I cannot wait to see what he has in store for this game.
Now, we're looking at the bans being put on the board already. Yasuo banned away. That's going to be targeted against Bubbles, who at one point in her League of Legends career, I'm almost certain, was a borderline Yasuo one-trick. No harm in being a one-trick pony, but sometimes it will draw bans that otherwise would not show up. And now one thing we've got to look at is a lot of players in regards to Jetrix, the jungler here on the side of Spooky Midnight, say that Jetrix's champion pool is Lee Sin and Gragas. So we're going to see the Gragas taken away immediately by White Lightning. That means we're more than likely going to see a Lee Sin lock-in by Jetrix here, and he likes to play those early game champions. He likes to play champs that are able to get him into the lanes, even in the games where Spooky Midnight has lost in the past, especially in the last few weeks of Premier League regular play. Jetrix has had good early presence, good early pressure, but he's got to make sure that when he gets aggressive like that, he doesn't go too far in without his team.
That's why I really like Kianan, because he knows when to farm, and he also knows when to gank. So he's not going to be wasting time whatsoever in this early game versus Jetrix on an early game jungler like Lee Sin. So Alcantos did lock in the Gragas. Now, that can either be put onto Kianan, who does play the Gragas. He plays anything in the jungle. He plays all these different types of champions, not to mention Kianan is Masters, so he does know how to play the jungle in the right way. But one thing I've also seen is the Gragas top lane. Now that can do a lot of damage if it is fed, and that's exactly what White Lightning needs. They need to get their top laner Alcantos fed, and that's how they are going to win this game.
Kianan and Spellbinding hovering over the Draven and the Braum. Nautilus now going to be switched over and hovered instead. Nautilus is a champion that we've been seeing in the top lane a lot recently. He's a champion that has been very powerful, a champion with a lot of powerful base damages to help him out in the trades in the laning phase, and he's a champion that has the ability to scale very well as a utility tank with lots of defensive and CDR style stats.
Yeah, it's actually very weird because Nautilus comes out like just out of nowhere as this type of pick where you build Sunfire Cape like very tanky, and then you just build a ZZ Rot because he doesn't have a ton of pushing power, but if he does have the ZZ Rot, then he's going to be taking down towers very fast, and some teams have actually been doing the double ZZ Rot, where the top laner might take it and the jungler might take it to put the ZZ Rot bottom and top lane to create that split pushing kind of threat. And then it just basically makes the enemy team cry because it's like, okay, what do we do now? We need to try and find the ZZ Rot, but then look, the enemy team's pushing down mid lane. So now all of a sudden you have a ZZ Rot top lane which you need to watch out for. You have a ZZ Rot bottom, and then the enemy team is also pushing mid.
Now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Harper Lee over on the side of Spooky Midnight. Spooky Midnight, in their own terminology, has become a blue shell team. They are the team that was sitting in very close to last place for a long time. They're currently, of the remaining 6 teams, they're the ones sitting on position 6 right now. So they are still that last place team for those who remain here in House Party 5v5's Premier League playoffs. That being said, though, in one of the final weeks of regular play, in off-stream matches, they took down both White Lightning and Never Clucky. And both games were won off the back of incredible performances coming down from Harper Lee. And one thing that the House Party 5v5 community has been talking about recently is how Kiona, over here on the side of White Lightning, their AD carry, he's not had the best past couple of weeks personally. He hasn't been doing exactly what he needs to do to be able to carry. He hasn't been having as strong of a performance as he wants to. So this dynamic of Kiona kind of on the downslope and Harper on the upslope, it's going to create this really interesting contrast between the AD carries. Both of them are going to be so incredibly important to the performance of their teams, and a lot of this is going to come down to who steps up and who steps back.
One thing that's actually super crazy is that Spellbinding is actually known as a Lulu and Ahri player, but Philly has locked in the Lux for the mid lane. So we're going to be seeing Spellbinding on a new champion, which is very rare, but it does come out after a while. Not to mention, Lux is that support type mid laner, which she is best at. So she is very good at utility style mid laners and not so much on the assassin type. So it's going to be very interesting to see there. But over on Spooky Midnight, their #1 priority is to get Harper Lee fed. To kind of answer that, in some senses, they run the Zillion mid, which is going to give Harper Lee even just that much more appeal to go ham, and just not to mention the Poppy pick in the top lane, which could easily ult 3 people out of a fight, and then you've got Collateral with the Black Shield. So it looks like Spooky Midnight is setting Harper Lee up with just all these tools for him to carry.
Now, Sivir as a champion has kind of been out of the meta spotlight for a while, but recently with the buff given to her where her ricochet bounces are allowed to crit, a lot of people have been looking at her and seeing this newfound potential, this newfound ability to once again shine and use her potential as a utility AD carry along with a damage dispenser to bring a lot of hybrid utilization to the team. And when Bubbles has the ability to bring back either herself or Harper, that's going to be awesome on these two. That's what you like to see on the Zillion, is the ability to have these people brought back to life that are able to carry the game. And I already talked about how Harper is able to carry the game. They've got Bubbles has come back to life. They've got the ability of Collateral to drop the Black Shield. They've got Sivir's inbuilt Spell Shield. As long as these guys, this entire team, are timing things right, it's going to be very difficult to catch Harper Lee out. Spellbinding is going to be hard-pressed to actually be able to bind a spell onto Harper Lee because of all the spell block ability on the Spooky Midnight team. The same goes for Kianan trying to catch Harper out.
Yeah, like, Spooky Midnight has done a very good job in setting Harper Lee up, but now we're looking over at the blue side. So something that we're knowing going into these games is that Kianan is a type of jungler to either play a support type jungler or play this damage heavy jungler to try and get Alcantas ahead, because Alcantas is just the carry of this team. But they're putting Alcantos on Nautilus. Now, even though he is very, very annoying, it's kind of back and forth because Nautilus is a tank still. So now White Lightning has to rely on the ADC and the mid laner to try and carry this team.
Both teams are going to be looking only at their AD carries and their mid laners for those scaling, mostly focusing on damage sort of champions. We're going to look at top laners, tank versus tank. We're going to look at junglers, tanky initiator thing versus tanky initiator thing. Now, obviously, Gragas is going to look to get a little bit more tanky than Lee Sin is, but with the advent of Runic Echoes, with the rise of this new jungle item, Gragases have opted away from the traditional Cinderhulk build. A lot of times we're seeing him go Runic Echoes. The burst he's able to bring is going to be very powerful when he goes to gank. And similarly, Lee Sin, of course, usually almost always goes for the warrior. So usually these two champions are going to start off with an offensive jungle item, transition into tank items as things go on, and then sort of be this off-tank bruisery type of thing by the mid-game and practically a full tank by the time in-game rolls around. And then, of course, the big difference that we're going to see in these compositions is between the two supports. We've got a tankier support on the side of White Lightning. We got more of a utility support on the side of Spooky Midnight.
Yeah, it's something that I've actually seen that most supports have been opting for now, like ever since the new masteries have been coming out, is that you either see a support go for the utility style of support that they love, or if they do love to go for tank, that's not going to hurt them either. So last season we were seeing a lot of Braum, Alistar, and Thresh, and this season we start to see the Nami, we start to see the Morgana, and it's kind of it's changed up the bottom lane in a lot of ways, and I think this is one game that we actually get to see how it's changed to the bottom lane meta.
And see it we will. We're 15 seconds away from getting ourselves into game number 1. Once again, House Party 5v5's regular season has concluded. This is going to be the first best of 3 of the playoffs. It's White Lightning in the blue, it's Spooky Midnight in the red. Stick around, you don't want to miss it. Welcome, everyone, to House Party 5v5's Premier League Playoffs. This is where best of ones have ended, best of threes will now rise to the occasion, and the teams have to put everything on the line or go home unfulfilled. No team has the ability to redeem themselves in the loser's bracket because there is not a loser's bracket. Once you drop the best of 3, you're done. White Lightning and Spooky Midnight are here in our kickoff game for the entirety of the playoffs. They're going to be competing in the quarterfinals. The winner of this best of 3 is going to go on to face the Space Age Wizards in the semifinals next week. But in order to get to the Wizards, they've got to conquer each other first. I'm Captain Flowers here on the casting desk, joined for this best of 3 by the Saved One. And Saved, tell me how you think this early game is going to play out. What do these junglers specifically have to do to get their teams rolling?
Since they put Alcantos on a tank top laner, I think that Kiana doesn't really want to focus that lane too much. It's literally just going to be a farm lane between these 2 top laners. So it's Kiana's job to try and shut down kind of their bot lane, even though they do have 2 spell shields. It's really weird in the bot lane situation. So really you're going to see a lot of action mid lane. Because you have both mid laners have some sort of snare or stun, so it's going to be very interesting to see if these 2 mid laners can land them in order to try and get these ganks off.
Nobody really going for anything too crazy during the level 1. Both junglers will be starting on the northern half of the map, and we're going to actually see only Kiona and Philly going for the Krug start because of that fact. It's going to be Collateral and Harper Lee just rushing into the lane at level 1, doing whatever they can, and we're seeing a lot of pro players recently complaining about the power of the level 1 camp tank for the bot lane, and we're going to have to see if Kiona and Philly are able to capitalize with that.
It's absolutely crazy because what solo laners have actually been doing is they stand in front of the wave that comes over. You see a fight in the jungle.
Fight in the jungle. Jetrix has the invade. Kianan might be in some trouble. Down to about 200 HP here on the Fat Man. Going to roll that barrel backwards towards his opponent. Lee Sin playing Lee Sin the way you want to do it. Getting aggressive even at the level 2 mark. And now we might see the 2v2 here in the top side. Jetrix and Alcantos now the ones fighting. Jet has level 2. Alcantos only level 1. He won't be able to find the kill onto Nautilus, but he's going to take him so incredibly low. All those potions have to be popped. Bottom side, Harper and Collateral looking to get into a fight with Kiona and Philly both. Kiona's going to be able to win out on that trade ever so slightly, but the caster minion's going to make sure that that's not going to be the story for long.
Yeah, that was a very nice response by Alcantos, even though it actually did put him at kind of a disadvantage in this top lane. Because right now he's actually half health to end steps full health. So we see already that there is an advantage for the Poppy in this top lane. But the one thing that Poppy is doing is she's actually pushing the wave. So Alcantos kind of gets a free wave there, and the only way that Jetrix can actually gank that top lane is if they dive him, which isn't really the most optimal decision. You see in the bottom lane that Spooky Midnight's bottom lane is just bullying the heck out of White Lightnings, and it's going half and half because Kiona is also outputting some poke, but then Spooky Midnight has the answer of the Sivir Q plus the zone potential of the Morgana.
Now, one thing that is interesting about this game is if you look at the way White Lightning plays, a lot of times Alcantos is the carry for this team. And Nautilus is not the kind of champion that you look at to carry a game. Normally, you'd see that on something like a Fiora or something similar to that. I don't really have any example as good of carrying a game as Fiora because, quite frankly, I don't think there is one from the top lane. But that being said, normally you see Alcantos on a champion that's able to carry something crazy like that. Nautilus is a champion where Alcantos, if he's the one person on the team just playing out of his mind, that might not be enough to actually carry this game. White Lightning's got to make sure they're playing as a unit more so now than ever.
Yeah, it's something. Oh, we actually see a little bit of an engaged top lane. Nothing much gonna happen there, but it's something that he's experienced on. Like, he knows how to play that tanky style top lane, and White Lightning has shown some success on it. Now, the only way that Alcantos can really carry this game is set up that split push threat as Nautilus usually does with the ZZ Rot portal. And then once that split push threat has come into play, he needs to rotate into these other lanes to try and get some TP ganks off, to try and get his other laners fed. So you're going to have a split push threat with the ZZ Rot top lane, and then you're going to have this giant tanky beast that Nautilus usually is, and he's going to be trying to get into these other lanes.
Still the junglers not able to make their way into any success quite just yet. Summoner spells still up across the board. 5 flashes versus 5 flashes. Jetrix and Kiana, neither one finding the angle that they need to find quite yet. Now, Jetrix, once again, very aggressive in the opponent's jungle, and this has backfired before. This has backfired so incredibly hard. The last time we saw him do something like this was versus the Inquisitors earlier on in the season, and it got him and his team triple or quadra killed against the enemy jungler at only the 9-minute mark into the game. So when Jet goes deep like this, when Jet is behind enemy lines, he has to make sure he's communicating with his team exactly where he's going, what he's doing, and whether or not he's going to need help.
Yeah, you see a fight in the top lane. Alcantos, it doesn't really have a lot of mana. BM, Laugh comes out there. But Jetrix actually played that successfully in getting that pink ward, and usually the spot that most people don't really pass, or that's the bush that they don't really check the most often. But one thing to actually note is that Jetrix actually gave his first blue buff over to the Zillion. So in terms of XP, Jetrix is going to be 1 level behind on Kianan. But it gives Zillion such an advantage in this mid lane because he just gets to spam bombs on top of bombs and slows on top of slows to just bully the heck out of this Lux.
44 CS on Bubbles compared to the 35 of Spellbinding. And that's actually a pretty complimentary thing to have, considering she's on a champion that's very, very difficult to CS with. Zillion's not a champion who has a lot of inbuilt farming mechanisms. It's not a champion that's made to be able to power farm. It's a champion that you've got to learn the very clunky auto attack animation, the somewhat slow traveling projectile, and if Bubbles is able to keep up this farm, that's going to be a good omen here for this Spooky Midnight team, because as long as Zillion is very powerful, as long as Zillion is able to bring the pain with those bombs and make it so when he revives someone, they revive with just a ton of health, he's going to be very, very useful in these fights.
I also kind of see the blue buff going over to the Zillion very beneficial for him for one other matter, is because ganking a Lux at this point is just not, it's not really possible in the way that Spellbinding is playing Lux, because she's sitting right next to her tower and just getting whatever CS that she can. And Jetrix, even though he can't gank it, he's providing Zillion with the tools in order to try and get enough harass onto him. We see in the top lane a little bit of a skirmish, nothing really gonna happen.
Instep just looking to proc his grasp onto Alcantos. They've got a lot of vision up here in the top half of the map, making it so Alcantos is able to see if Jetrix looks to try to pull his card up here. Instep's perfectly happy just farming up in this farm war, though. Back and forth, these guys are still even. We're going to see Alcantos going for that Sunfire Cape first item, while Instep picks up that Spectre's Cowl, allow himself to have a little bit of extra magic resistance, extra health, and regeneration. Very, very potent laning against something like Nautilus.
Jetrix is maximizing his ward potential in the blue side of White Lightning Jungle. We actually see a dive coming out bottom.
Dive here into the bottom side. It's going to be Kianan looking to make his debut. He is level 6. He has the ability to drop the cast. Instep makes the TP. Collateral's got the ultimate down. Glacial Fissure might just kill him before anything else is able to happen. Harper Lee boomerang over the wall. Collateral still incredibly low. The binding is going to connect, and Kiona slammed into the wall. That's going to be a 1-for-1. Alcantos here in the middle of the fight. Instep going to look to continue to fight this one. Bubbles ultimate has been used, bringing Harper Lee back to life. Kianan's still here. All of White Lycan looking to make a mess out of Spooky Midnight, as the binding will not be able to find what it needs to find. Instep looking for the shield over the wall. Jetrix has not yet taken part in this fight, and White Lightning is looking to file out as a unit and make sure nobody gets in too much trouble. Pick into Kianan, looking to knock him back into Spellbinding. Won't be able to find that mark as he was hoping. Jetrix sadly not able to contribute anything to this fight.
That was absolutely crazy coming out from both sides. The double TP actually coming out bottom from both top laners. You also saw that Bubbles actually roamed over to actually save Sivir's life. So in the end, it was a 1-for-1. White Lightning does have the advantage in gold at the moment, but looking at who the kills actually went over to, you see that Caitlyn got 1 kill compared to Poppy's 1 kill. So Poppy's going to be tankier in this top lane. But if you see in the bottom lane, I think that Kiona, it's going to benefit White Lightning more, because Kiona is definitely going to try and fire back at what Harper has to offer.
If Jetrix could have been involved in that fight, things could have gone much better for Spooky Midnight. Imagine if that kick would have taken place when everybody was in the mix fighting like that. It could have been a very different story, but it wasn't. And that's one thing that Spooky Midnight's going to have to make sure they're aware of in the future. That time, White Lightning had 5 people in a fight, while Spooky only had 4. And if not for very fast fingers coming out from Bubbles reviving Harper as the laser came down, it would have been a fight going the way of White Lightning because of that. Now Spooky's able to take the dragon. They've got that nice little bit of an objective lead to play with. They're still down about 700 gold, though. They got to make sure they don't start slipping in terms of the farm.
Yeah, it was actually a very good dragon call in that sense, because they saw that mid lane had to back, and they also saw that Kianan had to back. So it's already 2 members of White Lightning already missing. So they're just like, all right, let's just go for this. So they sent the 4 members of Spooky Midnight to try and kill this dragon, and that is exactly what happened. So it was a very good call.
Instep and Alcantos, the beloved wet noodle fight here in the top lane. Nobody's really going to be able to kill the other one for a while. Instep now going to pick up his own little bit of a Bomby Cinder, looking to build into that Sunfire Cape. And of course, because you're Poppy, your armor and magic resist goes a little bit extra compared to everybody else's, thanks to the passive on Steadfast Presence. Spellbinding will not be able to find the binding onto Bubbles, who's now looking to return some pain with the bombs. Won't connect those either. And we're going to see Kianan look to set up shop here in the bottom lane once more, this time through a lane gank.
Yeah, he tried to do a lane gank just then, but noticed that the bush was actually warded. So it was good by Spooky Midnight to ward that bush. You also see that Jetrix is trying to make something happen bottom, but good kind of call by White Lightning to try and just back off, try and get the items that they need to try and survive against this giant Sivir in this bottom lane. Now, White Lightning actually has a very good strat. They force Jetrix onto a champion he is comfortable on, but he cannot perform in this sense. We actually haven't seen Jetrix gank to Lee Sin's maximum potential, because SM is just pushing so hard in each of these lanes. The only real gank that he can, or the only real lane that he can gank, is the top lane. But even then, Alcantos is just so tanky at this point that it's just kind of not really going out for Spooky Midnight in that matter.
Junglers gonna spot each other out, and the fight begins. Alcantos making the rotation down as Bubbles drops the bombs and the ultimate onto Jet, and wisely, White Lightning backs away. The ultimate came down too early from Bubbles, and they're gonna be able to take down Jetrix because of it. That is how you answer the ultimate coming down from Zilean. You wait until it passes. It's only gonna last for 5 seconds, and after those 5 seconds dissipate, that person is in no better condition than they were before the ultimate was placed on them. A little bit too hasty on applying that ultimate means that Jetrix drops, Bubbles wastes the cooldown, and White Lightning makes the rotation here into mid lane to take the tier 1.
This is an excellent call coming out from White Lightning to try and rotate and try and get this mid lane turret. You also see an answer from Spooky Midnight, but Severe's in the bottom lane. You have got 2 supports in the mid lane, but then you also got the Poppy to try and support that push. You also see that the binding does hit in the bottom lane, but it was a very good call by Kiana to try and collapse onto the Lee Sin there, and it was a very nice ultimate landing from Spellbinding.
Bubbles eating a whole lot of pain on that one, and now White Lightning, with that extra kill, have found themselves with a 1,000 gold lead. Only 13 minutes into this game. That's not a lot of gold, honestly, in terms of an advantage. This is still anybody's game, but what's more worrying here is just the implication of what this means for White Lightning. That's the second time they've had more people in the right place compared to what Spooky Midnight's doing, and Spooky's got to step up their rotation game.
Yeah, it's something that most teams need to watch out for when playoffs is kind of coming to a near. Have you wasted time in practices for the whole entire season? We actually see Collateral has left the game, so a pause will be coming out, but it's something that you need to improve on as a team before playoffs happens. And going into playoffs, you need to ask yourselves, have we stepped out our game ever since week 1? Have we grown as a team, and can we make these certain calls to not get caught out? And if we do get caught out, do we have the backup?
We actually have an issue with one of the players currently DCing, apparently a hardware issue with the computer. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back momentarily after we resolve this. It shouldn't take too long. Of course, I can't make any promises. Paul's Party 5v5 can be a ruthless mistress sometimes, but stick with us, and we'll return live as soon as possible.
As I fell to the ocean floor, fading light through an open door, I saw myself rise with the water. They thought they could keep me down, hold that breath and watch me drown, but all they did was push me higher. We don't care what they say, we will be here all day. We'll stay until it's over, till the world's out of sight. We will stand, we will fight, it's not over till it's over. Through the nights in the rain, through the time and the pain, the stand will never fall. And then at the end of it all, we will win, we will shine.
Looks like we are going to be back, ladies and gentlemen. It was getting kind of bleak there for a moment, but apparently the game is good to go once more. This is White Lightning versus Spooky Midnight. This is House Party 5v5 Premier League Playoffs. I'm Captain Flowers here with the saved one, and Alcantos looks like he's getting into his groove here in the top lane.
Yeah, it actually looks like he's going back and forth, trying to trade. Nsep as well coming back, and you also see a fight here.
Nobody really going to go too hard in this top lane once more. It's always just going to be a wet noodle fight. These guys, two tanks, both just looking to farm up, slap each other back and forth, proc those grasps when they can. Jetrix over the wall looking to steal the buff away from Kiana, but he might actually get himself in some trouble. The barrel away going to keep him safe from that binding from spell. Jetrix getting very, very brave.
Yeah, it actually looks like I might be a little bit ahead of you in the spectator.
You actually are. I'm going to go ahead and comment on what I'm seeing right now. Anyway, we'll fix it in a moment. Alcantos, everybody else getting into a fight. I know I'm a little bit behind everybody, but you're going to have to forgive me for that one. White Lightning looking to collapse on the mid laner here from the side of Spooky Midnight. There comes that Zillion ultimate, but once again, will not be able to keep him alive through anything because he has to walk away. It's just going to dissipate, and he is out of the fight. Jetrix picked up, Instep not able to do a whole lot, and White Lightning once again finds the rotation.
Yeah, you see that White Lightning is now pushing that top lane tower at 15 minutes exact. So Poppy is in the top lane trying to defend this. She doesn't actually have her ultimate. She does have flash up though, but SM can't really come back with anything. You see in the bottom lane Collateral trying to get a binding off. Collateral, nothing really gonna happen there. Top lane though, White Lightning does take the second tower of the game.
And that's going to be two turrets now, 1-1 overall. So the objective game pretty much even. We're seeing the one dragon go in the way of Spooky Midnight, but that's only that 6% damage boost at 15 minutes into the game. Doesn't really equate to a whole lot yet. White Lightning with a 2,000 gold lead, just showing over and over again that Spooky Midnight is not able to keep up with them in terms of macro level rotation.
Yeah, one thing that White Lightning is doing very well is they're putting the kills on who they need to get fed. So before this game started, we saw that Alcantos is playing a tank in the top lane, and he's playing exactly that. He has 2 assists, no deaths, no kills, but then you see in the mid lane that Spellbinding is actually decently fed at this point. She's 2-0-0, and then you also see that Kiona is in the bottom lane with 1 kill underneath his belt. So he's going to be coming, both of these champions are going to be coming into these fights with a lot of power.
And both of these comps, again, are running the double carry. We got the Zillion and the Sivir against the Lux and the Caitlyn, so making sure you've got 100% of your kills on those two champions that they need to be on is going to be very big for White Lightning, and they might look to make another fight happen right here. Philly getting very brave, walking up into the middle of everybody. Glacial Fissure down onto 3. The binding will not connect from spell. Jetrix looking to find that insect play onto somebody. Won't land onto anyone. Flash is being blown left, right, and center. Bubbles trying to get herself away. Won't be able to do it. That's going to be 2 kills going away. White Lightning. Jetrix will going to make it 3, and there's the binding landing onto Instep after the fact. White Lightning takes the fight 3-0, and they are looking to make a very strong showing. The binding, not the binding, the laser coming down from spell binding will not connect thanks to that spell shield. And now that the shield has been blown, Ace in the hole takes him down. That's going to be an almost ace for White Lightning. Only Instep still surviving on the side of Spooky, and Lightning is running away with this one.
This is absolutely crazy. Like, we were talking about how for the last half of the season that Kiona has been lacking, and then that Spellbinding can really only play 2 champions. But now we see that Spellbinding is coming out with this 3rd pick that we haven't really been seeing, and Kiona is finally stepping up. So this is absolutely just revolutionary for White Lightning, and if they can continue this, it's going to be absolutely amazing for them.
I've seen Spellbinding play the Lux before. She's good on the Lux. I never really heard the 2 champion. I always saw her as more of an Ahri Lulu Lux. Because the times that I have seen her play the Lux, I've honestly seen it be just as impressive as the Lulu's been before. So this champion isn't one that you want to give away, especially because Lux is such a powerful champion in just a lot of compositions anyway, because of what she's able to bring to the table. Her team fight presence, if played correctly, is absolutely phenomenal, absolutely massive. And Spellbinding's showing it right now. 3-0-2 on this champion. 5 out of 7 kill participation, meme intended, and she is just doing a wonderful job along with the rest of her team, who are now 4,000 gold ahead.
Yeah, you also see a little bit of a support fight going on there, something that supports don't really usually do. And we see Spellbinding throwing at a Q, throwing at an E, nothing gonna hit. The Q from Braum does hit though. Collateral is getting zoned off for the time being, but dodges the binding.
Kiana and Jetrix, 1v1 here in the jungle, and Jetrix now level 9 compared to the level 11 on Kiana. Jetrix has fallen very far behind on a champion that cannot afford to do so. A 0-3-0 Lee Sin at 18 minutes into the game. He's going to be all aboard the struggle bus, just trying to have any impact whatsoever, aside from just being 300 more gold over to White Lightning the next time they get him in their sights.
Instead, might get caught out in the top lane here.
Poppy's hard to catch out, pretty tanky. Glacial Fissure will be able to find that knock-up in the air. Kiana's got the explosive cast, and Instep is going to be juggled around all over the place. They want to give this one over to Kiona, and they're going to be able to. White Lightning finds a freebie, and now they're looking to push top. 4 men strong.
They got Spellbinding fed, and now they're getting Kiona fed. This is exactly what White Lightning needed this game just to basically happen. You see Spellbinding going mid, stopping the push from Spooky Midnight, and White Lane is going to answer that with a top lane push of their own.
3 turrets compared to 1 now, a game that's quickly running further and further away from Spooky Midnight. Jetrix trying to get himself away from these guys, will be able to dodge the pain for the time being, but once again, 0-3-0 Lee Sin, all he's got's that jungle item. He's very, very easy to kill. The moment those quick feet fail, he's going to find himself in the dirt once more.
Yeah, you also see that White Lightning was trying to look for a little bit of a dive there, but nothing going to come out. We actually might see a fight here.
White Lightning making sure they're being a little bit careful, but not so careful that they can't capitalize on mistakes coming down from Spooky Midnight. Collateral gets a little bit too close. Alcanto sees his opportunity. He pulls the trigger, and Kiona and Spellbinding are there to follow up.
Yeah, that was a very nice play just all around by White Lightning to catch the Morgana out there. They are going to be answering with the mid lane push. We see fight here.
Instep might be in some trouble. He's going to be the one on the front line. Tier 1 turret's going to fall. Philly's down to about half HP, and that's going to be the signal for White Lightning to back themselves away. They're perfectly fine taking the turret. They're up 7,000 gold 20 minutes into the game. They've got a 9-1 kill lead. Things are coming up White Lightning every which way you want to turn, and Spooky Midnight is struggling to find any sort of response.
White Lightning played their lead just absolutely amazing. From the 10-minute mark to this point in general, we saw that top lane skirmish and it went in the favor of White Lightning. We saw that they didn't really have anything else to do from that point. So they're just like, what can we do now? Rift Herald's up, let's try and get that. Once they got that tier 2 top lane, they went mid lane, they answered with some more kills there, and they're just scaling from here. Like, they're just so far ahead, and it's absolutely nuts.
And I really like the way White Lightning has been playing around Bubble's ultimates as well. Zillion's ultimate is an ability that can be very, very obnoxious to deal with. If you aren't properly coordinated, even if only one person on your team isn't on the same page and accidentally kills the person once that buff is on them, they still get the reset, they still get to come back with pretty much full health, but everybody on White Lightning has been doing an absolutely wonderful job. As soon as they see those glowing hourglasses start floating around someone, they immediately break aggro. They back away, they allow that to dissipate, and then they restart the fight on that target once more. White Lightning is pretty much neutralizing this Zillion, making him 100% worthless. They're playing around it well, and they're being rewarded for it. Now looking to push up bottom as a team.
Yeah, they are going to be pushing that bottom lane with the ZZ Rust, so they're going to get this tower very easily. They can just do whatever they want at this point. They can get as many towers as they want. And one thing that we're actually seeing that has had a large effect on Spooky Midnight is that White Lightning has took the Gragas away from Jetrix, so Jetrix had to default onto the Lee Sin, but this is having an effect on him because in order for Lee Sin to be even just near close to useful in this mid game, he needs to get the ganks off. But one thing that White Lightning answered to that was a tanky top lane. You got a supportive mid lane, and Kiona and Philly playing fairly passive in the bot lane, so that Jetrix couldn't really do anything anywhere else. So now we're seeing that Jetrix is almost near completely useless, other than just basically a 3 ward plus a pink ward type player. And we also see a catch here.
Binding onto Jetrix. They won't have the follow-up damage they need immediately. Alcantos and Kiona sticking around here in the mid lane, looking to lay the damage into turret number 2. They won't be able to take that one down, but they're still up to 5. This is the last remaining objective outside the Spooky Midnight base. Collateral's going to be hit with that Lucent Singularity. Got to be careful in his own right. If he has that debuff on him, he just might die outright to a laser. Instep going to do a good job blocking away the ace in the hole. Spooky Midnight's got to be so careful. Morgana's so incredibly low she pretty much can't participate in this fight whatsoever. We're 23 minutes into the game. She does not have an hourglass to be able to go into this fight and survive. Alcantos deep into enemy territory behind the turret. It's going to drop immediately. Kiona down to about half HP. Got to be careful, flashing himself away from the binding. Jetrix now the one who might be in trouble. Gets himself out as well. And there's Alcantos. He's got the hook. Collateral gets himself away. And that's going to be Bubbles popping the ultimate. But what is the ulti able to do? Instep's trying to soak the damage as long as he can. But a man is not a sponge. He still manages to live. The Piltover Peacemaker will not claim collateral, and that's going to be White Lightning taking the turret, nobody dying, and everybody just gets to go home and regroup for Dragon.
One thing that's actually been slow pushing while all of this has been going on is the ZZ Raw portal bottom. And since they got that tier 2 top lane, their Nexus tower is at half health. It's at 1800 health at the moment just because of the ZZ Raw portal. That allowed White Lightning to push mid lane basically free. And once the Dragon came up, they immediately rotated over to that. So now bottom lane is at, again, it's at 2000 health. So that it opens a lot of options out for White Lightning. Should they just push bottom lane, get that bottom lane inhib to open up a Baron call, or should they just push another lane to try and get that inhib? There's just so many options for White Lightning at this point.
We're going to see Quicksilver Sash picked up as item number 3 for Kiona, and that's going to mean that binding chance to come back into the game is going to no longer be an option. It's also not going to be an option to have that double bomb stun coming from Zilean that picks Caitlyn off. If she finds herself in a bad spot with CC, she's going to be able to escape.
Yeah, because in that fight, Kiona could have went totally ham there, but the Morgana binding was coming so towards him in the way that Kiona wanted to path, and it forced him to flash. It forced him to flash defensively at that, so he wasn't allowed to go as ham as he wanted. So now he has to pick up the QSS just in case he does get binded. He can easily QSS it and then just keep going ham. We also see Jetrix maybe going on purple lane.
Spooky Midnight might look to collapse up here into the top half of the map. They're able to go deep onto both Kyanan and Philly. These guys are tanks, but Kansky burn them down. Kyanan gets himself away, and now here comes White Lightning's retaliation. Collateral's about to go down to Ace in the hole, and he's going to be the first casualty of the fight. Bubbles over the wall. He's going to drop. Double kill goes the way of Kiona. That's going to be a 2-for-0 White Lightning. Make it 3. Spellbinding on a killing spree as Alcantos looks to force the flash from Instep. And I was just about to bring up the story about how it's so difficult sometimes to break the base when all you can do is go for inhib turrets or Baron, but how's it going to be hard when 3 are already dead, and now you're looking for 4? White Lightning's making a hell of an impression in playoff game number 1 as they're about to shatter the first inhibitor turret, they're about to shatter the second, and they're going to take the inhibs down with them. Jetrix trying to stop Alcantos. What's he even going to be able to do? He has to stand alone against this White Lightning tide of destruction sweeping over his base. They're going to lose top lane inhib, and White Lightning walks themselves away, victory in hand.
Top lane got pushed out by the rest of the team. Alcantos went mid lane to try and put some pressure onto that mid lane turret, and not to mention the bottom lane with the ZZ Rod. One thing that White lane actually did very, very well in that fight in general, we actually might see Jetrix maybe going a little bit offensive. Not really going to happen though. But one thing that White lane did very well is they saw that mid lane was pushing in their favor. They sent Alcantos bottom to push that wave out till the Nexus turret, and then once the fight started, he TP'd into the fight. So you've got 2 lanes pushing in the favor of White Lightning, and already White Lightning is topside pushing that top wave. And Jetrix, he ulted the 2 tanks in that fight, and then Bubbles double bombed again the 2 tanks, and the damage didn't really show from the double bombs. Zilean was already just like the only thing that he had in his favor was the E-slow and the ultimate that Zilean in that fight only had, so it didn't really go too much in the favor of Spooky Midnight because it did lose them a couple kills and that top lane tower, and White Lightning is just looking for more.
The question right now isn't really can White Lightning win or is Spooky Midnight going to win. Barring some crazy big purple throw machine appearance showing up in this game, White Lightning's got this one on lock. The big question that remains is how cleanly will they be able to do it? Are they going to manage to lock this game away in the next 5 minutes? Are they going to end up having to drag it out for another 15 minutes because they can't close properly? These are the kind of questions that really shows what White Lightning is as a team going into the rest of the playoffs. Again, this is just quarterfinals. Winning this game still leaves you with a long road ahead of you to become champions for Premier League, and they've got to set a good example for their opponents to look at in the future and say, we're not a team to underestimate. We're not a team to take lightly, and that's what they need to do. Alcantos able to secure that turret here in the bottom lane, and that might be White Lightning's green light to look for the second inhibitor. Instep soaking some damage, but that's Poppy. That's what he wants to do. Collateral trying to keep himself safe while still in range to do things, as Kiana and the rest of the White Lightning team going to be able to find Jetrix. Bubbles' ultimate will actually find a res this time. Billy bound up under the turret. This might be a kill they're actually able to find. Kiana knocks them both away. Alcantos looking to make the flank happen if necessary. White Lightning has blown open the base almost completely. That mid lane inhibitor turret only with about 40% HP left. Bubbles no longer has the ultimate should this fight break out in full force. Bottom lane inhibitor is completely exposed. White Lightning still trying to force this fight in mid lane for some reason, and I'm not quite sure why.
Yeah, you also see that a kill goes onto Caitlyn, and you also see in the top lane a good 2 waves, or 2 super minions in that top lane taking down the Nexus tower.
Kianan and the rest of the White Lightning team looking to take down the mid lane inhibitor turret, and they will find it as the minions pick up Nexus turret number 1 in the background, and Spooky Midnight's got to go answer that, or they're going to take Nexus turret number 2. I think they're just now noticing it, and the minions are just wailing away on the thing. Couple more auto attacks will take it down, but it looks like Spooky might be able to stop it. No, they won't. Nexus now exposed.
There's so much that White Lightning can now do. Either push the inhibs to try and end the game, or they take sort of the safer route and go for the Baron, but hopefully they need to check where Jetrix is. Is Jetrix in the base trying to defend it, or is he over that Baron wall trying to get wards and maybe for the potential steal?
This is definitely not a game that is anywhere close to Spooky Midnight's ballpark anymore. I don't even think it's in Spooky Midnight's country anymore. These guys aren't able to maintain any sort of control over the game. White Lightning's looking to take down the Baron. Jetrix over the wall. Can you make the miracle steal that somehow sets this game up for redemption? And yes, he can. Jetrix with an amazing Baron steal. White Lightning's able to clean him up. And now where does the fight go from here? Alcantos over the wall. Everybody following him up. Kiona looking to gun these guys down off to the side. There comes the spellbinding laser. Kiana's got that ultimate over into the terrain, and Kiona finishes him off with ace in the hole. That's going to be 2 dead on the side of Spooky Midnight. The remaining 3 still have a Baron buff because Jetrix shows that Lee Sin's smite potential is something to be both feared and respected. All of White Lightning pushing up the top side now. The Nexus once again exposed, and White Lightning doesn't care if they lost Baron, because why care about Baron when you're able to take the Nexus anyway? Collateral knocked up into the air. Everybody from White Lightning going deep, going hard, and they're going straight to the victory lane. That's going to be game number 1 of this best of 3 going White Lightning's way, and an impressive 17-1.
57k to 43k, 17-1, and it's a 31-minute game. White Lightning played their lead so well, and just all of their rotations just it showed that White Lightning has been practicing their team synergy. Just GG to White Lightning in that game.
Spooky Midnight is going to have to take a second, catch their breaths, regroup, and figure out a way to not allow that to happen in game number 2, because if they do, they're going home. Congratulations to White Lightning winning game number 1. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be back momentarily to start up game number 2. It's going to be Spooky Midnight versus White Lightning again.